Lamont Roach, Pitbull Cruz.
Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point. What is good, y'all? Welcome back to the Puncher's Point. We got another preview / prediction episode for y'all. And this is going to be an interesting one. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Now, this is going to be a pretty good card by PBC, so it was kind of hard determining which fight I wanted to cover. But the reason why I picked this fight is because I feel like out of all the fights that are going on this card, these two have the most hype around them, and they got the most notable name. We are talking about Lamont Roach versus Pitbull Cruz for the WBC Interim Super Lightweight Championship. Now, both of these guys, I mean, if we're going to be honest, we know them as two of the guys who have given Gervonta Tank Davis some of his toughest challenges in boxing, and now these two are going to square up. However, I do want to let everybody know that these guys are a lot more than just guys that Gervonta Davis fought. Both of these guys actually got some skill, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to break down Lamont Roach. We're going to break down Pitbull Cruz. We're going to go through betting odds, keys to victory, all those great things that we do in every single prediction episode. If y'all are new to the Puncher's Point, make sure y'all stay tuned, because a little bit later on in this episode, I'm going to try to make y'all some money. So with that being said, let's kick into it. We're going to start off with Lamont Roach. Now, y'all might be asking, what are Lamont Roach's strengths and weaknesses? And we got to go to more than just the Gervonta Tank Davis fight. You know, we got to actually go through it, and we have to talk about what his strengths and weaknesses are. And we're going to go through all of those. So as I was watching some of his highlights, as I was watching some of his fights, I noticed that, to me, in my personal opinion, his number one strength is slips. I mean, this is a guy who's 25-1, and he's only got 10 knockouts out of the 25 wins that he's had. However, the thing about Lamont Roach is, what's very interesting about him is he, not the way he fights, but overall just the skills that he has. Kind of like a Sonny Edwards, a guy who's willing to stay in the pocket and go punch for punch with you, but he doesn't have the knockout power. But just like a guy like Devin Haney, he's got some underrated power. And in my opinion, the reason why he's able to stay in the pocket so much, and he's able to go punch for punch with a lot of these big punchers that he's gone into the ring with, is because of those slips. And he's very good at slipping punches on the inside. This is the only guy that I could honestly say is not a power puncher, and he's better on the inside than he is on the outside. That's a rare thing to see in boxing, a guy who's not a power puncher who prefers to be on the inside instead of the outside. So I will say, if I got to point to a strength, I'm going to point to his slips. If I had to point to a punch that I think is his best punch, I'm going to point to the straight right. He's very good at using that straight right, and he's very good at using it, whether it's a counter, whether it's leading off of a jab. I mean, Lamont Roach is very good at using that right hand, and he's got a very versatile right hand, but I will say his straight right is the biggest punch that I would honestly look at for Lamont Roach. The other thing I will say is his left hook. That's his secondary punch, in my opinion, that left hook. And the best times he throws that left hook is when he's in the pocket and he's going punch for punch with a lot of guys. He uses that right hand to either counter, or he uses that right hand to lead off of the jab, to kind of follow the jab. But that left hook is the punch that he really likes the best onto the inside, and that's what I noticed. A very consistent body puncher. This is a guy who has knocked out some guys with some body punches, and overall, he's very consistent at going to the body. He doesn't stop going to the body. You know, he's constantly working that body throughout the entire fight. You can go back to the Tank Davis fight, and you can see the times that he tagged Tank's body. You can go to the Hector Garcia fight, and you can see how he tagged Hector's body. He's had knockouts where he's knocked out guys with body shots. So overall, I will say that, to me, is a big strength from Lamont Roach, is how he's able to consistently go to the body. Pressure. I mean, this is a guy who's going to keep on coming forward. And the truth about Lamont Roach, what makes him very interesting, is, again, a guy who is not a knockout fighter, but he's not going to stay on the outside. That's not where his game is. His game is on the inside, and how he generates that game on the inside, pressure. He keeps guys on the back foot. He keeps going forward. If these guys want to throw while he's going forward, he's going to throw one right back at them. And that's what I respect about Lamont Roach. He throws into the fire. He's not backing up. He's not running away. He's not doing all of that. Lamont Roach is going to put that pressure on you, and he's going to try to get into the pocket with you. So I will say pressure is a big strength of Lamont Roach's, and it's the reason why Lamont Roach has been so successful on the inside as well. That right uppercut, like I said, he's got a versatile right. I really do like the right straight. The left hook is my second favorite punch from him. And if I had to point to a third, it'd be the right uppercut. The other thing too is with Lamont Roach, when you put all of those together, he's a well-balanced fighter. You know, I mean, this is a guy who's been the distance many, many times, so he's got a decent gas tank. Now, what I will say about Lamont Roach is even though with all those strengths, there are some weaknesses with Lamont Roach, and we got to break those down as well. The jab keeps him at bay. And one of the fights that I saw this weakness with was the fight against Jamel Herring. You see, the fight against Jamel Herring was a more rangier fighter. He was a more taller fighter. And at the time, Jamel Herring was, I think, a little bit more known. And what Jamel Herring did a very good job of was just sticking that jab at Lamont Roach. And Lamont Roach, there were times where because that range was so much, he couldn't get around it. Now, don't get me wrong. There were times where Lamont Roach also clipped Jamel Herring, but that was by getting to the inside. But there were many times where he couldn't work around that jab. So I will say if I had to point to one weakness, it would be the jab keeping him at bay. He struggles with fighters who control range. Again, Herring did a very good job of that. There were moments where Tank Davis did a very good job of that. In the Hector Garcia fight, there were moments where Hector did a good job of that. So in my opinion, if you can control the range on Lamont Roach, if you can force him to stay on the outside and try to work onto the inside, I do feel like that is a weakness that you can take advantage of with Lamont Roach. Footwork could be better. It's not sloppy, but it's also not one of his strengths. In my opinion, there's sometimes where he could get flat-footed. There's times where I think he's a little bit slow on the feet, and it's not nothing that's too costly. Now, if you go into the ring against a certain opponent, then it could be. But in my opinion, I don't think it's something that is too detrimental to his game, but I still do think it's a weakness. I don't think his footwork is the best, and people are going to be like, well, what are you talking about? Look, I will say this. Not every flat-footed boxer is slow. I'm going to say that right now. However, what I will say about Lamont Roach, I'm not going to say he's slow when it comes to the feet because he got some okay footwork, but I'm not going to call it a strength. The reason why I say it's a weakness is because I've seen it on display against certain guys, certain fighters that he's fought, and I've seen times where he wasn't able to kind of catch up with those types of guys. He gets caught overreaching. This is the big one. In the Tank Davis fight, there were times where he got caught overreaching. There were times where Herring caught him overreaching. There were times where Hector Garcia caught him overreaching. And in my opinion, the reason why is because Lamont Roach, again, he likes to get into the inside. I think sometimes he kind of goes for broke, and I think that's his way of getting to the inside. Sometimes it works. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Sometimes he really does clip opponents, and when he clips them, he basically ends up getting to the inside. But there's also times where he's overreached, where he kind of miscalculated the distance he had between his opponent, and that puts him in some very vulnerable situations. Counter straights, I will say if there's a punch that Lamont Roach is susceptible to, it's counter straights. The reason why I say that is because, again, like I said, he overreaches, and a lot of these guys, they're able to hit him with some counter straights. They're able to hit him with those types of punches, and I do believe that once he gets hit with that type of punch, I do believe it backs him up. Tank hit him a few times with that punch, and overall, I do feel like that is a punch that you could take advantage of if you're Pitbull Cruz. And last but not least, too conservative, especially in that Herring fight. There were moments where he kind of didn't let his hands go as much as I wanted him to. And there were moments in the Tank fight where he would just let Tank throw some like 3, 4, 5 punch combinations on him. And even though the defense was good from Lamont Roach, I do feel like there were times where he could have unleashed a little bit more. And I do feel like there's times where he plays a little bit too conservative. He's a little too patient. And I would like to see him kind of pick it up a little bit in this fight, especially against a guy like Pitbull Cruz. With all that being said, what are the strengths and the weaknesses for Pitbull Cruz? Now, when I look at Pitbull's game, Pitbull is one of the most exciting fighters in the sport. And he's a short guy. He's a very small guy. But let me tell you something. He hits like a truck, Pitbull. And we all know about Pitbull's power. We all know about it. But there's a lot of things that are very underrated about Pitbull's game. And we're going to go over those. So his hooks. His hooks are the biggest thing. I mean, in my opinion, those hooks, they are bombs. It doesn't matter which hook he hits you with, whether it's the left or the right. It really does not matter. Pitbull is going to hit you with something. And when he hits you with something, you're going to feel it. Let's just say how it is. You know, Pitbull is not one of these guys that you want to mess with in the ring. He's not one of these guys that you would want to kind of test your luck with. I'm not going to lie to you. So I will say his hooks are the biggest strength for me. His pressure. just like Lamont Roach, he's got pressure as well. And I do think that's the reason why I believe this fight is going to be in the middle of the ring a lot. And it's going to be a fight where they're not going to be measuring each other's distance. It's not going to be, I'm not going to say they're going to fight sloppy, but it's not going to be as calculated on the outside. It's not going to really be a chess match. All the work is going to be done on the inside. And I do believe that Pitbull possesses some very, very big pressure that could upset and that could make a lot of guys uncomfortable. So I do think that Pitbull is going to apply a lot of pressure in this fight. I do think that's another one of his big strengths. Very good at disguising punches. A guy who is as small as him, as short as him, he really does love to keep those punches low. And he really does love to kind of raise them at the last minute. There's a lot of times where he'll throw that hook, and that hook will come from the bottom, not the top. And you won't be able to see the hook because he's hiding it. He's very good at disguising those punches. The uppercuts, he's very good at disguising the uppercuts. He's very good at not showing you what his hand is. He's very good at disguising his punches. He's very good at hiding them. That's one thing that Pitbull is very good at. He's got very good movement. This is a guy who's flat-footed, who has very good footwork. And the reason why I say that is because with a snap of a finger, this guy could just charge you like that. His footwork is speed, clear as day. And he's flat-footed. But the truth is about Pitbull Cruz is he's very good at just rushing right to you. He's very good at using his footwork as not necessarily like cutting angles or doing anything crazy like that. Just bulldozing, just going straight through. That's where his pressure starts, right there, with the speed of his feet. He's good at shrinking space. Think about Pitbull Cruz. He can put you in a cylinder. And if he puts you in a confined space, that's going to be a problem for a lot of opponents. It's been a problem for a lot of opponents. I mean, you can look at Rolly. You can look at that guy, Giovanni, I think his name was, Giovanni Cabrera. You can look at Salcido. You can look at a lot of these guys that Pitbull Cruz fought, and you can see how he shrinks the space on them. And again, like I said, this is not a guy you want to go into the ring with. This is not a guy that you want to stay in the corner against. This is not a guy that you want to lean up against the ropes against, because he will take advantage of it. He's very good at slips as well. I'm going to say he's not as good as Lamont, but I will count it as a strength. And the reason why I say that is because he's very good when it comes to the inside of just doing the slight movements to avoid very dangerous punches. I think that's what made Pitbull Cruz so good. And I think, in my opinion, that's what makes him a very good fighter, is his ability to kind of slip onto the inside and his ability to counter off of that. Versatile power puncher, like I said. I talked about the hooks. I talked about the uppercuts. He will hit you to the body. He will hit you with some straights. This guy is going to throw a bunch of different power punches. He's going to give you a bunch of different looks, and it's overwhelming for a lot of fighters. And with all of that being said, Pitbull Cruz, again, 28-3. So he's got 3 losses. So how did he get those 3 losses? Well, we're going to talk about him. Wild hooks. Pitbull Cruz is going to throw the kitchen sink at you, whether it hits or it misses. He's going to throw the kitchen sink at you, and sometimes that requires wild hooks. Sometimes it's kind of him just like Lamont Roach. Both these guys are more similar than a lot of people think. They will throw wild shots. Lamont Roach, it's more of overreaching. With Pitbull Cruz, it's wild hooks. That is how these guys are going to make mistakes, and it's going to be interesting to see which guy is going to capitalize on those mistakes better. He runs into shots as well. There's times, like I say, he charges, but there's also times where he's just worrying about charging. He'll kind of keep his head open, and his opponent will just be waiting for him. And when he's waiting, that opponent comes and he'll hit him with a counterpunch, and that'll be something that backs up Pitbull Cruz. You see it a lot in the Tank Davis fight. He struggles with fighters with foot movement. Perfect example, El Rayo. El Rayo did a very good job of using his foot movement to keep Pitbull Cruz at bay. He did a very good job of using his foot movement the entire fight to force Pitbull to chase him. And Pitbull was chasing. There were moments where Pitbull had a little bit of success, but it wasn't enough. And then there were moments where El Rayo would just let him start throwing some of those punches, and Pitbull couldn't land. And the truth is that foot movement was a big problem for Pitbull. He couldn't track him. He wasn't able to put him in some of those confined spaces. And Jose Valenzuela, El Rayo, did a very good job of unleashing some jabs, some straights at him. He did a very good job. He puts 100% into every punch. Now, like I said, this guy's going to throw the kitchen sink at you. He puts 100% into every punch, and here's why this is the problem. Because a lot of the times when Pitbull Cruz is putting 100% into all of these punches, he gets wild. He'll kind of lose some gas in the tank a little bit. And in my opinion, not every punch has to be a 100% power punch. You know, like not every punch has to pack 100%. That's not always a good idea. And Pitbull does that. I mean, a perfect example of a guy who put 100% in every single one of his punches is George Foreman. Muhammad Ali drained him, ended up, the big rumble in the jungle. When George Foreman came back, he realized that I can't put 100% of power into all my punches. I have to kind of decline some of that power. I have to make sure I subdue some of that power. He did that against Michael Moore. He threw every punch at like 40 and 50%, got Michael Moore very confident in coming in and trying to land some shots. George Foreman said, once I put that 100% on him, he's going to feel it. And I think that in this fight, Pitbull Cruz is going to have to do that. I think he's going to have to be able to not throw every single punch at 100%. I think he's going to have to kind of hold off on some of that power until when it really matters the most. The other thing that Pitbull Cruz is a little bit too much of is leaning. And when he leans in too forward, that's a perfect chance to throw an uppercut. That's a perfect chance to target his body, because this is what I mean. Pitbull Cruz, whenever he gets wild, he loses leverage. He leans in too much. He throws wild hooks. He does all of these things. And again, he could become a very sloppy fighter. No established jab. That is one thing about Pitbull Cruz. No established jab. He will throw a hook before he even throws a jab. That's the thing about Pitbull Cruz. I know he got a jab in there. He don't use it. He just throws wild hooks, and that's it. Hooks, uppercuts, counter straights, overhands, all of those. If you can't throw jabs, then there's no way of keeping opponents at bay. That's the problem. And he has a non-existing jab, and I think that he needs to establish that in this fight big time. And last but not least, he gets stuck behind a jab. That's what El Rayo did a very good job of, keeping him behind that jab. And that's why Pitbull Cruz didn't have a lot of success of getting into the inside, of cracking El Rayo, of getting him hurt. He didn't have a lot of those moments in this fight. He still had a few, but he didn't have a lot of those moments. And the reason why is because he was kept behind the jab. And to me, those are the weaknesses for Pitbull Cruz. If I had to point to the first key to victory for Lamont Roach, I would say that the first key to victory is high punch volume. With somebody like Pitbull Cruz, you're not going to get away with just doing counter punches. You're going to have a high punch volume. Maybe not as much as him, but you're going to have to keep up with him at least. That's the only way you're going to have a chance at winning this fight. That's the only way you're going to have a chance of winning this fight, because I'm going to be real. I don't think Lamont Roach wins by knocking him out. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think the only way Lamont Roach can win is to match his punch volume. That, to me, is just how you're going to beat Pitbull Cruz. The second key to victory is take advantage in the pocket. This sounds crazy. A lot of y'all are looking at me with like 10 heads, I bet. Make sure you stay in the pocket. Here's the reason why. It's because if you can stay into the pocket and you can take advantage of him in the pocket, I'm not saying stay there and just go punch for punch every single time. No, there's definitely times you should slip some of those punches. There's definitely times where you should back up a little bit, but take advantage in the pocket, because that's when you're going to find Pitbull Cruz getting sloppy. And the reason why I say that is because, like I said, Lamont Roach's best game is staying in the pocket. I don't want to see Lamont Roach stay on the outside against Pitbull Cruz. I don't think that's his fight. I want to see Lamont Roach in his fight. The best way to do that is to stay in the pocket. And y'all going to look at me like I'm crazy, but he did that with Tank. He stayed in the pocket with Tank Davis, who was one of the most powerful 135-pounders. He stayed into the pocket with Tank Davis, and when he stayed into that pocket, he was able to capitalize on some of those exchanges, and he was able to back up Tank. And I do believe that he could do that against Pitbull Cruz, but he has to stay in the pocket. He has to make sure that his defense is tight, and he's got to take advantage in those situations. That's how you're going to win the judges over. And last but not least, keep a consistent jab. As I said, I know this might sound like a contradiction, but just bear with me. Keep a consistent jab. In my opinion, when you're not on the inside, keep sticking him with that jab, because that is what the judges are going to see on the outside. Then when you get to the inside with him, when you work your way to the inside, then you start throwing those punches. Then you start taking advantage onto the inside. The one thing you don't want to do is stay on the outside and get clipped with a Pitbull Cruz wild hook. You don't want to get clipped with that. So again, the best way to avoid that, keep sticking him with that jab. Keep keeping him at bay. And then on your terms, get into the inside and take advantage in the pocket. To me, that's what Lamont Roach has to do. And if he can do those three things, I think Lamont Roach is going to walk out with a win. Now, with all that being said, what are the keys to victory for Pitbull Cruz? The keys to victory for Pitbull Cruz is, first and foremost, the first key to victory is bring the fight to him. That's going to be a big key in this fight, is who's going to bring the fight to who. In my opinion, Pitbull Cruz has to be the aggressor. He's got to force Lamont Roach to be uncomfortable. And the best way to do that is to bring the fight to him. Again, it's to charge. It's to get into the inside of him and force him in those situations and see if he can maintain them. That'll be the first thing. The second thing I will say is take advantage of when Lamont Roach overreaches. If you can do that and you can clip him with one of those brutal hooks or one of those uppercuts, maybe one of those straights, you got him in a lot of trouble. And I do believe that Pitbull Cruz, like I said, he is a versatile power puncher. And I do believe that him being a versatile power puncher, he could take advantage of moments like that when Lamont Roach overreaches. And last but not least, counter with straights. Lamont Roach's biggest weakness is straights. So if you have a chance to counter him, use a straight. And to me, those are the 3 keys to victory for Pitbull Cruz. Pitbull Cruz, we all know about how strong he is. We all know about how versatile he is as a power puncher. The thing about Pitbull Cruz is he has to work his way onto the inside, and he needs to do that against Lamont Roach. He's the type of guy, he needs to take advantage of when Lamont Roach makes stupid mistakes like overreaching, because they're both going to make mistakes. Lamont Roach is going to overreach. Pitbull Cruz is going to throw some wild hooks. They're both going to have to take advantage of those moments. And then last but not least, the counters with the straights, that is where Lamont Roach has trouble. And I know Pitbull Cruz is a shorter fighter. He's a smaller fighter. But I do believe that his straights are powerful enough to rock Lamont Roach, to hurt Lamont Roach if he clips him in a vulnerable position. And even though he might not have the range as these other fighters, I do think he is fast enough to throw one of those counter straights. And he is fast enough to clip him with one of those. So I will say, I do like those 3 keys to victory. And you never know. I think one of those keys to victory, if he follows all 3 of them, he could get a knockout. Lamont Roach is the favorite in this fight by minus 260, while Pitbull Cruz is the underdog at plus 190. This is FanDuel. Betting odds are subjected to change. So this is the big moment. This is where I'm going to help y'all win some money. And I'm not going to lie to you. I waited to this breakdown because I wanted to hear what I had to say before making a prediction, because I went on in the red corner. I said that Lamont Roach is going to win this fight. But I'm still indecisive. That was before I even did some research on these guys. That's before I went into a more in-depth analysis on these guys. And after going through the strengths and the weaknesses, I'm not going to lie to y'all. I got to pick more than just Lamont Roach had a better outing against Tank Davis and Pitbull Cruz. We're not going to base it off of that. What we are going to base it off of is, who do I see most likely taking advantage on the inside, taking advantage of rookie mistakes, and who do I see basically controlling this fight? Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I think it takes a fighter like El Rayo to beat Pitbull Cruz. I think it takes a fighter like Jamal Herrig, somebody who's got some range, to beat Lamont Roach. So right then and there, these guys, they're not each other's kryptonite. I'm going to say that right now. When it comes to the inside, I do think that Pitbull has the edge on the inside as far as power. I will say that, because I don't know how much I can rely on Lamont Roach to not make those types of mistakes with Pitbull Cruz. So there's that. What I will also say, though, as well, is I do believe that you can hit Lamont Roach with more susceptible punches than you can hit Pitbull Cruz with them. And so for me, I'm not going to lie to you. He had one of his best performances against Tank Davis. It was a draw. It was a very competitive fight. Pitbull Cruz had one of his best performances against Tank Davis, and it wasn't enough. He lost 116, 112, and Tank Davis had a broken hand. So there's all that, but we're not taking that into effect. That's the history that they have with Tank Davis. You might be asking, why did I bring that up? Well, the reason why is because I got to see their strengths in that fight and see what they can do. And in my opinion, there were times I feel like Pitbull Cruz had Tank on that back foot, and I do think that he's going to put Lamont on that same back foot. The difference between Pitbull and Tank is Tank's a little more calculated, and Pitbull is just going to charge right through. And I seen what Lamont Roach was able to do when he had the time to think about Gervonta Davis. But I don't know how he's going to do against somebody like Pitbull Cruz who's not going to give him that time. And so, in my opinion, I'm going to change my prediction. If you ask me what my prediction is, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to go with the underdog. This is where I'm going to try to win you guys fights. I'm going to go with the underdog. I got Pitbull Cruz winning by unanimous decision. I think that the way I see it happening is I do think that they're going to have some competitive rounds early on. But I think what's going to happen is I think the power is going to be too overwhelming for Lamont Roach. And one of the things that I think is going to happen, I think Lamont Roach is going to get very conservative. I think he's going to get very cautious. And I don't think he's going to be able to keep up with Pitbull Cruz. I think he'll do good defending it. I think he'll do good of not putting himself in vulnerable situations where he's going to get hurt or knocked out. I don't think that's going to happen. And I do think that both of these guys, they're going to have their flaws in this fight. I don't think it's going to be a pretty fight by neither one of these guys. But what I do think is going to happen, I do think Pitbull's power is going to make the difference. I do think the ability for Pitbull not to just sit there and wait, the ability of Pitbull to just charge right through, I do think that Lamont Roach not being an outside fighter, I don't think he's going to be able to handle that pretty well. And I think once Pitbull gets into the inside and starts hitting with some of those power punches, I think Lamont Roach is going to be a little more conservative, kind of like what he was against Herrick. I think that he's going to be a little bit more conservative. I think that he's going to respect Pitbull's power a little too much, and I think it's going to go to decision, but I do think Pitbull's going to win by unanimous decision. So I got Pitbull Cruz by unanimous decision, and overall, I think he will remain the WBC interim super lightweight champion, and we'll see what happens from there. But overall, I could be wrong. I already told y'all, bet on the underdog. You can win some money. However, could I see Lamont Roach win this fight? Absolutely. I could see Lamont Roach taking advantage on the inside and outsmarting Pitbull Cruz. I could see that. Don't get me wrong. I could see either outcome happening. I do think this fight's going to go to decision. I don't think anybody's going to get knocked out. But the biggest key for Pitbull Cruz, the thing that I think about is how's Lamont going to handle that power? And even if he handles that power correctly, the truth is you're not going to have time to think about what he's going to do. Lamont Roach is really going to have to make sure he did his film study on Pitbull Cruz, because Pitbull Cruz is not going to give him the same amount of time that Gervonta Davis did. So in my opinion, I do think that just Pitbull's speed and just his ability to rush, I do think that's going to be the difference maker in this fight. I just think Pitbull's speed is going to be a little bit too much. So that is what I will say. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it. If you want to bet on Lamont Roach, that's fine. But I do think that Pitbull Cruz got a good chance to win this fight. And I kind of favor Pitbull a little bit more than Lamont Roach in this fight. So Pitbull by unanimous decision. So put that bet in. And if you win some money, come back and thank the Puncher's Point. And with all of that being said, it's time for us to log off. Again, make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. We are on the podcast platform. We are on YouTube, all social media. Make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all subscribe to the YouTube. Make sure y'all subscribe to the podcast. And last but not least, to get great previews, great predictions, to get insightful previews and predictions, to get in-depth preview and predictions, make sure y'all continue to stay on point with the Puncher's Point.